Well, hello everybody, and welcome to another edition of Faster Masters Rowing Radio. I'm Rebecca Caro, and this is the podcast where having a coach only makes you faster. It gives you the confidence to become the athlete that you want to row with. And as ever, I am joined by my colleague and co-host, Marlene Royal. Hey, Marlene.
Hi, Rebecca. Nice to see you. As always.
It's been a while. Like, I feel like we missed 1 week of the podcast, and I feel like I've had a holiday, which I have. I've been away, and I haven't seen you for a chat.
No, but we did have a special meeting podcast this week, so we saw each other a few days ago.
We'll talk about that later. So, listeners, live watchers, please put in where you're watching from. Say hi, because if you don't write it in the comments, we don't know you're there, and you won't get any credit for having been on the show with us.
Right.
Now, let's just launch into our wonderful sponsors. So the rowing directory continues to grow. It's on rowing.chat, which is the podcast that hosts Faster Masters Rowing Radio. It's a network of podcasts, and just click on directory. We have updates from the RedBuoy Row, who do recycled custom clothes, from Croker Oars UK, where John has spares and he can do custom builds of oars for you, or just straight off the shelf. The Coxswain Academy has a service where you can get recruited to college, or you can learn to cox with them. Exerfly is a flywheel eccentric lifting gain product. The Oar board is stand-up paddleboard rowing for sea or for river rowing. Whitehall Rowing make classic rowing boats for ocean rowing. Annabel Eyres is a rowing artist, and she offers prints, clothes, and gifts. She's very well known for having started the Rock the Boat business, which is still going in the UK, although she's no longer associated with the business. Bont Rowing provides shoes for rowing boats with carbon soles. Ludum is a performance analysis and squad management software for rowing clubs. And we have the Coffey Corporation, who make the SimulatOar, which is a sculling or rowing indoor rowing machine. And lastly, the San Diego Crew Classic, a very famous regatta, and they are going virtual this year. So if you want to take part in a classic regatta, head over to rowing.chat, find the directory on the top menu, and you can find all of those organizations there inside. Now, welcome to our live watchers. Please tell us where you're watching from. Just put a comment underneath the live stream so that we know you're there. Now, let's kick off, Marlene. This past week, this is where we talk about the work that Marlene and I do to advance the cause of Masters Rowing more broadly. So this is not necessarily about our business. This is about spreading the word. It's about advocating for Masters Rowing. So what have you been up to?
Well, my week was really filled with preparing our March program for Faster Masters. And the thing that I focused on, or we focused on in our March program, for those following the training program, the 1K phase training that is in the March program is still a base training phase, but we do have some people in the Southern Hemisphere that will be shifting gears in April, getting ready for their peak races in May. And then we have our North American people, or people who are going to be focusing on FISA World Masters in September. So this March program is still a base phase for all of them. And then April, we're going to be, we start to bring up the intensity, but April, we're going to start shifting a bit more. The land strength training program goes along with this as well. And in the land training module, I've also included what are called the exercises, the Sturt McGill Big Three, which are spine stability exercises, and very important part of your core work, which goes along with the rowing lifestyle module that we did. And I did a whole program about what we call spine health. And spine health is, how do you learn to move without stressing your spine, and particularly like keeping a neutral spine, moving more through the hips and the shoulders. And athletes and rowers are really good doing this during training, but they're not really good doing this during all their household and yard work activities. So this is actually something that focuses on the do's and don'ts of what you should do around the house and on land, so that you keep your back in good shape for your rowing. And our performance video focuses on a discussion and demonstration of our category 2 and category 1, which is our performance pace rowing. So I go into that in quite a bit of detail. And our technique video, we give you a drive suspension drill on the erg. And the reason we included that this month is because in the force curve analysis that we did the past 2 months, for those of you who sent in your videos and screenshot of your force curve, we saw a lot of people losing drive suspension in the second half of the drive, so they could really strengthen their full drive, especially that second half. So the drive suspension drill is a drill that will help people with that. And in the bonus, we'll surprise you. There's some nice videos in the bonus.
There certainly is, because I'm the one that picked the videos. I know they're nice.
Rebecca always picks nice videos.
Well, I think this is how I justify spending time browsing YouTube rowing videos. It's work.
You have nothing else to do.
I have a lot else to do, but there's nothing I enjoy more than going and finding these things.
Yeah. Save them on your watch later list, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Now, this past week for me, I've been organizing in the background a master's series of camps for here in New Zealand, which I can't tell you much about, but they are going to be all around the country. I have organized funding. I'm in the process of organizing locations, and they are going to be teaching a peer-to-peer coaching method for masters, which is going to be super exciting. And I think it's going to be a world first too. I've also shot a video about Faster Masters. I've actually shot 4 or 5 different videos, and we'll release those over the next few weeks. These are more publicity, so people like you who already know us, you kind of don't need it, but hey, it's nice to do. And we've also agreed a sponsorship for the US Rowing's Crash B races, which are coming up this weekend. So if you're taking part, and we know that quite a lot of our Faster Masters are taking part, do tell us in the comments what event you've entered, because, well, it's keen. We're keen to know what you guys are up to, but we're also keen to recruit more people onto the Faster Masters family. So people who watch this podcast, people who are on our newsletter list, and obviously some people who choose to buy our programs. And we went on the backpack show. So this was why we didn't have a podcast last week.
Right. That was fun.
It was super fun. What was the best bit for you, Marlene?
Well, it's interesting because our host, Chris Brogan, who's a really well-known marketing expert, it was cool to be in the situation of people taking notice of people who are creating interesting new businesses, and to be in the entrepreneur crowd was really fun, and to meet some other people who were working around the show. So that was definitely fun. And since they were in Boston, we hit it off right away because, I went to Boston University, and they didn't know really very much about rowing, but they were very interested in rowing and how one could start a business for masters rowers. And, I just thought their whole interest in it was really, really, really fun.
Yeah. Their key thing is, what's one thing you put in your business backpack to help you in your future business life? So I'm not going to tell you what Marlene and I recommended, but they did ask us a couple of really cute questions, which is, if you could travel for rowing, where's your favorite destination? And while I was sitting there with my brain going, oh my God, where do I pick? Where do I pick? Marlene dived right in there.
Of course. I only live in beautiful places. People maybe don't know that about me, but I'm sort of, that's one of my hobbies, is to live in beautiful places. So Lake Bled is one place where I've spent a lot of quite a good part of my life. So
and they were so quick to find photos of it and put it up on the screen, because like us, they use the same broadcast software, which was called StreamYard. So here we go. We have Alec joining us.
Great, from Vermont, my neighbor.
And a very loyal listener here.
Lauren, yes, nice to hear you and see you.
Looking smiley.
Jeanette, you can get a SimulatOar. We give you permission. It's a terrific machine to row on. I love it. I did a whole camp at Asheville Rowing Club in North Carolina once. We had terrible water and we sat in the boathouse, and I did the entire weekend technique module on the simulator in the boathouse. So
wow, that's so tough, isn't it? And then someone who doesn't say who they are, but best regards and take care. Hi, thank you. And yeah, tell us who you are. Sorry, for some reason, Facebook isn't sending us your name. And for the Crash Bees.
Great. Yes.
Joseph LeMay, he's in the men's Masters E-race. Go for it, Joe. And I hope that goes really well for you. We'll watch out for you on the day.
I think our Sagamore rowers, our club group, I think they're going into Crash Bees. I think CC Aguda is going into Crash Bees. And
then someone here is extremely knowledgeable. How are you, Rebecca? The news isn't good from their heartquake in the islands near Auckland. Yes, not a heartquake, but an earthquake. Actually. And I just had an alert on my phone from our civil defense, which basically, they have an awesome system here. They can basically send a text message out, and I don't know if you guys can see that, but it says emergency alert, civil defense, don't go on the beaches, stay out of the water, stay safe, don't go sightseeing. Why do they think we might be sightseeing? Well, I suppose maybe you want to see a tsunami, but yeah, that's not so good.
No.
Hi, Glenda's back. You're back in Wilmington in North Carolina, Glenda. That's so cool to see you. Look at your smiley face with is that a husky dog you have? And someone in Sarasota. Now, Sarasota's Florida, isn't it?
Yes. Sarasota's Florida, Saratoga Springs is New York.
That's right. And Cece says hi, and she's in the Lightweight Masters E category for the Crash Bees. So anyone else that's watching live, tell us where you're from, and if you're doing the Crash Bees, please let us know. Lisa McMuff. Hi, yes. Lisa. Is it sunny in Colorado today? It's always sunny in Colorado, isn't it? Oh, I don't
probably
even
still snowy. I think it's still snowy, but maybe they're starting to get on the water there.
Does it depend if you live in the mountains? Because doesn't Colorado it's a big state?
Everything's in the mountains in Colorado.
Oh, everything. I'm so ignorant.
Denver's the Mile High City.
Ah, of course. The dog, Glenda says, is a small American Suma. Suma this and Suma that. Do you know, Glenda, we have a different name for dogs like that here. They're called Bitsers. Bits of this and bits of that. And her name is Daisy. That's so cool. And hey to Jessica Fisher Ashland, who's in Oregon, but originally from San Francisco. And she's also doing the Crash Bees.
Yes, Ashland, one of my favorite places. I've actually done many sculling camps at Ashland, but I haven't been there for a couple of years, but I know that area very well when I lived out west.
Lisa says it's raining, but snow is coming. Is snow a positive thing? I suppose maybe it is.
Yes. In Colorado, snow is positive.
Snow is positive. Okay. We can do that. So back to this week, and I want to show you my wonderful photo. So the photo for the week is of Orca's island. And this is Tena Hall, who put this up on the Masters Rowing International Facebook group. Look at that. They're ocean going single, sitting on the beach, ready to launch. And she has the big plastic box next to her. And in the discussion, she explained all of the safety features of what she takes with her in the boat, so that she has like her spare clothes, and she has all the obvious things like PFDs and water bottles and a snack and a phone. And there's a really long, really interesting discussion thread that she kicked off with a whole load of people sharing ideas about what are good things to put on the water with you while you're going rowing remotely somewhere. So I was pretty impressed with that, actually. It was a really robust discussion. Righty-ho. Let's get into our first big topic of the day.
Mm-hmm.
How to think less. So, Marlene, you've coached a lot of people. What's one of the things that's a sign to you that someone is overthinking what you're trying to explain to them?
When they're shaking their head as they're rowing. That's definitely a sign of overthinking. Somebody puts the blade in the water and goes. That's one side. Facial expressions are usually quite telling. If somebody is overthinking or being very self-critical, for sure.
I have a test, which anyone who's watching, you can try this. You can try it on the erg. You can try it when you're doing any athletic thing. So say you have a technical point you're working on. Here's what you do: is you spend 10 strokes thinking about your technical point, and then you spend 10 strokes thinking about nothing. Just lift your chin, look at the horizon, and clear your brain. Do not think about anything at all. Just row or lift weights or whatever it is you're doing. And then after that second 10, come back and assess what you're doing and take a look at whether or not you're still doing the technical thing that you thought about or not. And I expect Marlene can guess what I'm going to say next. What am I going to say next, Marlene?
They usually do it better.
When you're not thinking, you usually row better. So isn't that weird, or is that weird?
Well, there's probably a relaxation element for sure. Now, I mean, when I'm talking about relaxation, I don't mean like be a Gumby and don't do anything. I'm talking about actively, let's call it elasticity, right? Or rowing without tension. I like thinking of rowing without tension better than relaxation, because relaxation, people can get too sloppy when they think relaxation, but without tension or with more fluidity, you do have to feel what you're doing. And so I think if you get out of your own way, you allow yourself to, just by quieting down the chatter in your brain, you allow yourself to pay attention to how do things feel or how do things sound. So, I think it allows somebody to switch into a different sense to give them feedback.
I also think that there is something that particularly that people do when they're first learning, that they have too many things to think about, and their brain like cycles round a whole load of things. They think about catch, then they think about the drive, and then they think about the finish, and it's too much.
Yes.
And I have a rule of thumb, which I always explain to people that I'm coaching, which is only think about one thing at a time. Don't try and cycle through a lot of things. And I try to explain it like this. So choose one thing to think about and think about it. And then try, if you want to think about a second thing, put that first thing into the background. So your frontal cortex, your brain is not actively thinking square early, whatever it is. Maybe your other thing you're thinking about is to have a light grip on your handles, for example. and you move on to thinking about the light grip on the handles with the square early thing in the background. And then you can quietly come back to the square early and leave the light grip on the handles in the background. And by this way, you try and train your brain to make the movements automatic without you having to consciously think about them, because that's where we're headed. We want to be able to row well and skillfully without having to flood our conscious brain and the little voice in your head that talks to you when you row. Everyone has one, I'm sure. You want that to be as automatic as possible.
And that's why drills are so important. You know, you have to do drills. You have to do part stroke rowing, exercises, because you have to create new patterns, and it takes time to create new patterns. And when you can do it in a relaxed fashion without the self-criticism, you learn much better and much faster. And you know, it should be enjoyable.
Yeah, the relaxed criticism is really, really useful. And it's important to understand that I particularly find women do this. They are very critical of their performance. And actually, your voice in your head is a really useful tool, but you have to control it and you have to limit what it's allowed to do. And it has to be objective, not emotional. So the questions you need to ask yourself is, did I do the movement the way I wanted? Yes or no? Not say, oh, you did it bad because you didn't do it correctly. You just have to be a bit more like a scientist observing an experiment. Does that work for you?
Yeah, so I think the language terminology is really important. There is no good or bad. Okay, just you can say I didn't square my blade fully before I placed it in the water. That it's not a good or bad thing. It's a question of what does the skill require. Okay, if the skill requires that your blade is fully squared as you place it in the water, you know, you use that as a reference, you know, that, oh, I didn't place my blade wasn't squared. My blade was over squared. My blade was under squared. So I would take the good or bad out of it completely and just, or say your release, you get stuck at the release. Well, I didn't take my blade out cleanly that time. Okay, so next time, what do? This time I'm going to tap out a little bit earlier. This time I'm going to keep pressure into the blade. You know, just put it in the context of the skill, that you have something to measure from, but develop the image of what you want first. You have to know what you're aiming for to know whether you achieve it for where you're at this moment in the sport, because where you're going to be at in 10 years is going to be different. So we only have to look at like what's good for right now. Okay, just what's good for right now, and then build on that.
Yeah, not even 10 years. I think 10 weeks is a useful horizon.
10 weeks, okay. Well, I'm a long-term thinker.
So one of the key things to understand is that your movement patterns are what you might be trying to change, and that you've maybe done thousands and thousands of strokes in one particular way. So just doing a drill once and thinking about it for 1 or 2 outings is not likely to change it permanently. And my reflection from my own rowing is I revert back to my poor habits, particularly when I'm tired. So if you see video of me right at the end of the race, I'm not going to tell you what I do, but trust me, I'm doing it and I wish I wasn't.
But you're winning the race.
Yeah, there's a tension in me between deciding if you win at all costs or if you row like a complete, what's your word? Gumby. You know, I would prefer to row with good technique and still be able to win. I can't always do that.
Well, the results aren't going to say how you were rowing when you cross the line. It's a race. It's a race. Sometimes, you know, you have to default to whatever gets you there, right? So if you've maxed out everything, the goal in training is to extend that border. How long and hard can you go before you cross that barrier? So that's the goal. That's what every elite athlete is training to do, to, you know, extend the fatigue point so that things don't break down. You know, that's what everybody's trying to do. Everybody's trying to do the same thing.
They are. Do you have a particular phrase in the US about how you describe that state when you're right at the end of your physical capabilities and you need to add a bit more? Because in the UK we call it, and then you throw the kitchen sink out.
Well, there is that kind of expression. I'm sure there is. I just have to think. Yeah. Well, then you just, you know, all engines go, right? So
Yeah,
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, right? So don't let your brain talk you out of it.
So here's Cece saying, thank you for that. The pics I have of me racing highlight all the technical things that need work. Cece, don't do yourself down.
Hey, you've got you're out there. So the first thing is you have to say, give yourself credit because you showed up, you know. How many people won't show up, right?
Well, that is so true. There are definitely lots of people who won't show up. And if you don't show up, if you're not in the race, you're not in. Talking of which, actually, is anyone else going to be doing the San Diego Crew Classic? Because they're going virtual. And my crew, we've decided we're going to do a women's 8. And we're going to try and enter certainly 2 different age categories with just 1 or 2 personnel switches. We're just trying to figure it out at the moment. Because they've given us a window, I think, of 4 or 5 days to submit our scores. And the race is interesting. So you have to race 1250 meters in one direction and then do a 180 spin around and then race it back the other way.
Is that on the water?
Yep. It's to take account of tide and wind and current.
I thought it was on the Erg. It's not on the Erg. It's on the water.
Both. You can either do it on the Erg or on the water. And apparently if you enter a team, their software will accommodate people who are not physically in the same room. So each Erg is separately logged on their timing software. And the entire 8 scores are averaged in real time. So you all finish at the same time, even if you're not as strong or as somebody else.
Wild. That sounds wild.
Isn't it clever?
Yeah.
I can't wait to see if it actually exactly happens. Here are some more funny rowing phrases.
Yes, empty the tank for sure. That's the one I was searching for. You can tell it's been a while, Joe, since I raced my last race. So
I still think throwing the kitchen sink at it is a good one.
No, I like that too.
Here's Alec. And he says, as a novice rowing a single, that over my ability level, I find if I just blaze away, I run straight and fairly well. If I ease off and try to work on a single component of the movement, I track to my right and I thrash around like I'm mixing a margarita for a bit before I almost flip.
Well, Alec, in the summer when the border opens, you can drive across the border and come and see me for a private lesson. I'm not very far from you.
You can come to mine and mix me that margarita.
Yeah, we can all go to Rebecca's for a private lesson.
I offer no lessons in margarita mixing, only margarita drinking, I think.
At Craftsbury, we used to have this Pinert X25. That's this famous periwinkle color. Well, that'll be a story for another day. But we had this little hula dancer on this little rubber hula dancer on the stern, and everybody used to fight about that boat. Everybody wanted to be assigned that boat.
You know, I know the hula dancer. She's called Hula Girl, and my husband got given one in a Secret Santa a few years back, and he had it in his work vehicle, and she just sat there kind of dancing away on the
yeah. Well, there used to be one on the deck of the boat now. So anyway, that was some years back. It's not like that anymore, but maybe she deteriorated. I don't know.
So was she part of the instruction, like you had to not make her move?
I don't know, but we could certainly build that into the program if it was requested.
I think that would be great. We just need to find somebody who can supply us with an enormous number of hula girls.
Yeah, or something like like in the Crew Nerd app, you can put it on the bounce factor. So, you know, we could connect the Hula girl to the bounce factor, and that would be really great for working on your releases.
We think up some crazy ideas, but you know, if you have the technical skills to make that happen, please get in touch.
Yeah, it
you know
works.
where to find us. Now, Marlene has a really big topic. Kick off.
Okay, layback versus body angle. This is one thing that I like and often point out to people when we're doing video reviews, and this, as we said in the program, our bonus the last 2 months was looking at some of the Faster Masters sent into us their force curve and videos to go along with that, and we gave them feedback how to improve their force curve and their stroke. And you know, so again, some of the common feedback we saw was maintaining that drive suspension in the second half of the drive. But another really, really common thing is too much layback. And first you can say, okay, well, what is, you know, what's the purpose of layback? You know, I like to separate the idea of layback from swing, which is more using, you know, using your body weight and getting that energy potential out of your body. Layback does not necessarily increase the effective length of your stroke. And I think that's one of the things that you have to look at. You know, you have to look at what's happening to the blade. And when the pressure is leaving the blade, if you're still laying back, that is not helping to move the boat forward. And on the erg, it's very easy to lay back too far relative to what you would do in the boat, because that rewards you. That's one of the issues that you have to be aware of when you're erg racing or you're doing hard things on the erg, that the length that you row is going to give you a better score. And we know that. But you have to be aware of how you're training on the erg when it comes to comparing that with what you're going to do in the boat. So in order to determine your layback, the first thing I would say is pay attention to your lower back. The moment your lower back posture starts to collapse, you've gone too far. And that kind of needs to be the rule, to keep your lower back safe and to keep you connected and not overstress that low back aspect of the stroke. Because if the low back is collapsing, that also means your pelvis is changing, your weight is changing in the boat. The other thing that's really important, which is our topic here, is if you lay back too far, you simply do not have time to get your body angle. In the amount of time you have in the stroke cycle for the recovery, if you have too much layback, you have about enough time to get your body up over your hips. And almost 100% of the time, we will see that the rower cannot get their proper body angle on the recovery because they've had too much layback. It simply takes too much time and too much energy. So our advice would be to focus on getting that body angle out of bow so that you're in a better position on the recovery to then drive and swing. And, you know, and if you're in the boat, you have to look at if your blade is working, it can be in the water, right? If it's not working, if it's finished working, get it out and get ready for the next stroke. So,
yeah, it's important to recognize that your sequence of body movements should be only directed to making the boat move in a forward direction. And you can do a lot of weird stuff and still move the boat forward, but you can also do weird stuff and really not advance the boat. And remember, when you're sitting in a single, if you lay back, you are pushing the bow down into the water, and that's going to slow you down because there's a greater wetted surface area. Now, your bow naturally moves up and down through the rowing stroke cycle. That's normal. And ideally, you want it to move with as little upwards and downwards movement as possible. You can see this when you're rowing in a single or in the stroke seat of a crew boat, because you can see the stern, because of course the stern is doing the opposite of what the bow's doing. And so watching your stern, or if you can get yourself videoed, have the person who's manning the camera take a shot that starts at the back of the boat and goes up to and including the body of the rower. You don't need to see the oars. You just need to see how they're moving. And then you can see relative one to the other, how their movement is in time or out of time with the vertical movement of the stern of the boat. And you can do the same with the bow of the boat and the bow person, particularly if it's a crew. That makes for a really instructional look at whether or not you're succeeding in what Marlene described in understanding the difference between layback and body angle.
Yes, I like the story you told long ago of keep the bow up, that sense of keep the bow up, keeping the bow up. You know, that's another thing. If you have a lot of layback in the boat, you're not keeping your bow up, you know. And that helps, that helps you learn, if we go back to our competence incompetence, right? That's another mode to help you feel how to learn the release timing, is if you focus on that, you empty your mind and, you know, tune into that sensation of keeping the bow up. That's very instructional for feeling when to release and make that transition out of bow.
Yeah. If you get the opportunity to row in a crew boat in the bow seat, you particularly in eights and quads, there is actually much more vertical movement in the bow seat than any other seat in the boat. You really can feel it. And that can be a really useful way of you kind of zoning in on what it could feel like. Now, it won't feel like that so much in your single, because obviously 4 people's power does not equal 1 person's power. But that's quite useful. Or if you're a woman and you can row with a guy and get the guy in the stroke seat and you in the bow seat in a double, because they're that much stronger than you, you can often get a much greater sense of that movement. So that's layback versus body angle. I'm going to add a particular peak of mine, which is that for erg work, if you are rowing at stroke rates that are under 26, you should be able to achieve the exact same split with your feet not strapped into the erg. Marlene is nodding.
Yes. I was going to remind you to say that, or I was going to say it. So good.
So one of the things that's a point of difference about Faster Masters rowing compared with some other rowing coaches is we nearly always like to tell you how to make a change, not just what the change is that's needed, but the how to do it. So for the labor versus body angle, how to do it, try on the erg or in the boat, loosen the straps so that your feet come away from the foot stretcher. If you're nervous about doing this in a single scull, just loosen the straps, pull the tongue out of the shoe so it's super loose. Your feet won't fall out of the shoes because your toe is still inside it, but you should be able to feel that you're not being held in. If you do have the confidence to take your feet out of the shoes and just put your heels in, that's definitely worth doing. It does shorten your stroke quite a lot in the boat, somewhat differently from the erg, but definitely on the erg, you can work really hard. You can get identical scores. And if you can't get identical scores, it just shows you what you could be working on. And you can really feel whether or not your feet are staying connected with the foot stretcher.
Yeah, or in the single, if you're afraid to take your feet out, that's a little indication, right? So you can take 1 foot out, keep 1 foot in, take 1 foot out and put 1 foot on the shoe. Just see how that goes. And then, progress from there. That's another variation.
Yeah. My doubles partner and I, we've been doing our warm-ups with feet out in the double. And we have learned a lot, particularly about the finish timing. It's really funny because we actually have a steering foot in our boat because it's a pair double. And it's really hard to steer when your feet aren't in the shoes.
Oh, that'll do it. Maybe you have to use masking tape around your toes or something.
I'll bring that for the next episode. Not masking tape. I have a much better solution. Now, a unnamed listener has got a long question. Marlene, do you want to hit this?
I'll tell you, I'm working with a coach per your guidance, and I'm surprisingly finding erg class very helpful. Surprisingly, why? Erg classes are great. While coach gives me form guidance, he has found having me focus at displayed item in the erg data app, like stroke length, power curve shape, with continued improvement of time of 500 meters. Getting the back half of the power curve continues to be the most elusive. While because that's the skill. That's the skill of keeping your weight between your foot stretchers and your handle, keeping that pressure for the entire drive. So, that's that perception. You can focus on, again, what it feels like. Are you keeping even pressure through the handle? If I remember Rebecca did a rowing chat with Caryn Davies a long time ago. Really good rowing chat issue. And one of the things Caryn Davies said, that if you feel the water pressure, it's always through your fingers, through the oar handle. So you want to make sure that pressure of the handle is very consistent throughout the entire drive, all the way to the end of the drive. And if you're losing the suspension, you'll probably feel that pressure has changed, or you perceive your weight on the seat. Okay. If your weight is coming down on the seat about halfway through the drive, that's what we call, losing the glutes, losing suspension. So,
you need the drill that's in the Faster Masters, the Ergs suspension drill.
Yeah, their drill is in there. It's in
there we go.
Just go do it, man. Go do it. Practice.
Oh, goodness me. We are all on a lifetime's mission to practice and to continue practicing. And it never ceases to amaze me that the bad habits that I learned when I was in my first years of rowing are the things that have stuck with me all of these years.
I can't remember my bad habits. I'm sure I had them. I have to go back into my journals. I absolutely cannot remember. So I'm like, I got to go back and read my high school club notes and see what I was terrible at. Probably lots of things.
I think your selective memory is a really handy habit to have.
Yes.
And then it's like that goldfish thing. You come around again and you go, oh, look, here's something to work on.
Gee, what about that? And I mean, in my first race, I was stroking the boat. Imagine, you want to hear a nightmare. I was stroking a junior quad in St. Catharines at the schoolboy regatta, and my very, very first race of my entire life. And I jumped my slide, and I had to row the whole race with no seat. So that was my first race, which was just terrible. I think I was crying at the end. And then my second race, I was also stroking the fore, and I hit a seagull and killed it in the middle of the race. So my first two races were just horrible. But at least that race we won. And I got this beautiful, Westside Rowing Club in Buffalo used to make these beautiful, beautiful ceramic mugs that were really nice. So I had one of those. But yeah, my first two races were terrible.
You must have been going quite fast to kill a seagull.
Well, I mean, the problem was, like, I hit the thing and then he went feet up. And so he's like feet up in the water, and our whole boat started cracking up. And we thought, oh my God, we could hardly, we were 14-year-old high school girls, right? We all start cracking up, and this bird is like feet up in the water. We're like, oh God, this is just horrible. So anyway, people don't do that. Try not to do that. Rebecca will try not to be hit by the tsunami today. Try not to kill any seagulls. But anyway, lots of things happen on the race course. So
lots of unexpected things happen on the race course. Yeah, you can't practice for what happens when you hit a seagull.
No,
actually, you probably can, but you'd kill a lot of seabirds.
Oh, I mean, I've hit beer kegs. I hit a beer keg once on the Charles and like bounced right off it. Didn't hurt my Van Dusen, didn't damage my boat, but it sure did wake you up in the middle of a race. So, God.
There's a joke here in New Zealand. There's a very large river called the Wanganui River, and it's well known that you can go there and hit a dead cow in the river.
Oh, so anything, right. Oh gosh,
I've never done that, but it's a good joke. I think that's all we've got time for Faster Masters Rowing Radio today. And thank you, everybody who came along, everyone who listened live, and for all of the people who obviously will be listening somewhat later in the podcast edition. This has been Faster Masters Rowing Radio. You can catch more of this by subscribing to our newsletter, and we'll send you a link where you can get all of the stuff that we talk about each week, plus every now and then a couple of extra bonus things, which are not things we talk about on the podcast. You can only get that from the newsletter. So go to fastermastersrowing.com and /newsletter, and you can subscribe there. We would love it, actually, if you could invite a friend along too. So go subscribe yourself, subscribe your friend, And we look forward to seeing you next time.
Yes, and good luck to our Crash Bee racers. Like, just go for it.
Yeah, they don't need luck because they're well prepared. When you're well prepared, you don't need luck. You just need to go for it.
Yes, follow your plan.
Follow your plan and enjoy it. Have fun. I'm kind of jealous in a way. I would love to be in an actual group, you know.
Yeah, remember, pain has no memory. So as soon as you stop, like within a minute, you're not going to remember the pain.
How awful it was. I think that on that positive note, we will leave everybody. So bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.